Hello, my name is Michael. Thanks for coming. Welcome. Excuse me. If you like this video, please remember to give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also check out the description below of my online store called Attention Bazaar. Also, please come and browse and see if you don't find something that's just right for you. Today's topic is, again, one of my slogans, and this one has a heading. It's PowerPoints, that's the big title of it. But underneath that heading, there are 5 items, and I'll name them and then unpack each one, describe what each one means. There's an event, an interpretation, a feeling, an action, and a result. So I have talked about this in another video where I talk about 2 maps. This one and another map that I talk about a lot, which is body, mind, relationships, and environment. And in that video, I put the 2 together. In this video, I want to focus more closely on not the body, speech, mind, or body, mind, relationships, and environment map, but on the other one. In a sense, the body, mind, relationships, environment map is about domains, dimensions. The other one is about things that happen over time. It's kind of a sequence of process. And I found that it's useful, particularly in combination with the other map. This was my kind of what I arrived at after a lot of thinking. It's very influenced by a cognitive behavioral approach to therapy, but it's not just cognitive behavioral. I've attempted to kind of bring in a very general understanding to provide myself with reference points for my work as a therapist and a coach, but also for my life. And so I want to describe these 5 things to you. Again, I'll name them: an event, an interpretation, a feeling, an action, and a result. The first one, well, let me start with this way. Say, everything I'm about to say relies upon self-awareness. It relies on the ability to pay attention to ourselves, to notice ourselves in a variety of ways. That if we can't self-reflect, we can't make use of this map. It relies on that. So that's the premise of what I'm about to say. So we start with an event. Things happen, right? Or as some people like to say, shit happens. Something arises. We notice something. That's the beginning of this process. So if we pause here and recognize that we don't notice everything that arises, everything that happens, and we tend to attend to things that we expect, things that we already believe are going to be true. And we tend to not notice the things that we're not looking for because they don't fit our belief system or our set of expectations. There's a famous experiment in which people are shown a video of several people tossing basketballs back and forth to each other. And some people have white shirts and some people have, I don't know, blue shirts. And you're supposed to count the number of times that the white shirts pass the basketball back and forth to each other. And so people are watching this, trying to count the number of times. And at the end, they ask how many, and they say how many they saw. And the experimenter says, okay, did you see the man dressed in a gorilla suit who walked right through the whole scene? And more than half of people didn't see it at all. But if you watch it again, and I did this, I didn't see the gorilla either. There it is, right there. You're not attending to it. So what can we pay attention to? What do we habitually pay attention to? And let me back up. I forgot to mention this. The reason I'm calling this PowerPoints is because, to me, if we can be self-aware and reflect on each one of these 5 parts in this process, we can leverage our own power. We can find the means to change our life and to change ourselves. If we don't attend to any of these or neglect one seriously, it's hard going. If we can't attend to each one, we access our power. So the first is noticing as much as we can. If our expectation is that people are mean, or people are untrustworthy, or people are unreliable and likely to abandon or abuse us, that's what we're going to look for. It's also possible that if we're naive and we believe that everybody is trustworthy, we're not going to spot that person who can't be trusted. So first, we can pay attention to what we pay attention to. We can pay attention to what we could be grateful for, rather than, or in addition to, the things that we're not happy about. So right there, an event. What events are we noticing? Are we noticing opportunities to get our needs met? Or are we missing those opportunities because we didn't even pay attention? All right. So that's number 1. Number 2 is interpretation. And I did talk about this a bit in the other video, which you might check out, 2 maps. An event can mean many different things. Its meaning is not a given. We have to unpack it. We have to try to understand its significance and assign it a meaning. And here's where we can be self-aware and reflect and notice the meaning that we assign something and wonder, how is it that that's the way I interpret things? Why is it that I always tend to see the bad in people? Why is it that it always seems to me as if the universe is not on my side? Why is it that that's the way I'm giving meaning to the things I'm noticing? So we can ask the question, why is that? We can also ask the question, is there any other way we might understand this? If somebody didn't respond to our text message for a day and a half, are we stuck with the interpretation that the person doesn't like us, or they're angry with us, or they're just untrustworthy? Is that necessarily true? Is it possible that they're busy? Is it possible they didn't see our message? Or is anything else possible? Can we even entertain that? I think it's good, especially if we're having a problem with something we've noticed, that we consider at least one other alternative interpretation, if not a few. Try them on. See if they're all plausible. See if one's more plausible than the other. Evaluate how we assign meaning. We don't have to be stuck with our first assumption. It might be right, could well be, but it could well be wrong, could be a distortion, could be inaccurate, it could be lacking some further information that would give it a fuller context. I saw, here's an example, I saw, there was a photo of a dog had a sheep by the neck with its mouth, and looked like it was trying to kill it, right? It was trying to pull it, to eat it. That was one picture. And then the next picture, it showed a bigger view, which was that the sheep was partly submerged. The other half of the sheep that you couldn't see was submerged in water. And this dog was pulling it out of the water. It was like a sheepdog, So one interpretation is, here's a hungry, murderous dog about to kill the sheep. The next moment, it's, oh, this dog is saving this sheep's life. There's a lot of things like that in our lives where we don't have all the information. We jump to a conclusion a little bit too soon. So it's good to pause and reflect on how we interpret what we observe. So there's an event, there's an interpretation, then there's feelings. And if we've had time to formulate an opinion about what something means, we tend to have an emotion that corresponds to that. Sometimes a very powerful emotion. And so how we feel about something is not just based on the thing that happened. It's also based on how we interpret it. Feeling angry and hurt by somebody who hasn't responded to a text message might turn into concern and empathy if we find out that the person happened to be in a bicycle accident, or somehow some tragedy befell them and they were distracted, or even that they had some kind of emergency situation at work that took all their time. That will change our way of feeling about it. Here's another metaphor that I heard many years ago at a workshop I went to about stress and stress management. And the person doing the workshop was saying that our level of stress is not simply based on the things that happen, but it's based on our interpretation of them. And he gave a metaphor, which was, imagine a man who is locked in a dark room. He can't see anything, and he moves around and he bumps into something, and it feels like it's a snake. So there's a snake in the room with him, and he's quite anxious, and he scuttles over to the other side of the room in the dark, and he's listening intently, thinks he hears something, he's not sure, thinks he better move in case the snake is smelling him, and so he's just in a state of anxiety and restlessness. Then, for a moment, a light gets turned on, and he looks over and sees that this snake is actually a coiled up bit of rope in the corner. Now he understands what that was. He's no longer anxious, no longer restless to escape what might be a venomous bite. So he may not be happy about being locked in a dark room, but the snake part is done with. It's the power of the way we interpret things, the impact it has on how we feel. So one thing we can self-reflect on is our interpretation, but with our feeling, we can look at our feeling and say, what interpretation led me to this feeling? What other feelings might I have if I interpreted otherwise? The other thing that we can do to find power here is to not necessarily act on our feelings, to just feel them, to let them be as they are, and not jump from feeling to action. We can let the feeling subside. We can consider if, we might consider different interpretations, but we wind up with the same feeling. It doesn't always, like the coiled up rope, magically dispel the feeling. But if we have enough doubt about that feeling being accurate, we can refrain from acting on it until it passes, and we have more time to consider another course of action, which takes us to the next one, which is action. So we've gone from an event to a feeling, from an event to an interpretation to a feeling, now to an action. So we take action. The feeling that we wind up with is what energizes or motivates us to take, action. So before we act, have we considered what outcome we're looking for? Have we considered the short and long-term likely outcome of the action that we take? Is it not simply an impulse to vent anger or to run and hide? Can we be intentional and thoughtful about the course of action that we take? We may not get exactly the outcome we desire, but we might be able to avoid a whole lot more trouble than we would have had if we're more thoughtful about the course of action we pursue. Okay, so the last one is the result. An event, interpretation, a feeling, an action, a result. We do something, it causes something to happen. Even refraining from doing something has a consequence. At this point, we maintain awareness, self-awareness, in terms of, can I pay attention to what happens when I do what I did? Am I happy with that outcome? Am I not happy with that outcome? There's a kind of a cycle that we can get in. If we're habitually only attending to certain things and habitually running a default program for coming up with the meaning of everything, if we're having chronically the same feelings about things and taking the same action, the results we get will tend to reinforce the whole thing. If we think people, are rejecting us and we get very upset about this and we raise a fuss and complain often, hey, guess what? People might not want to be around us. People might avoid us because we're really difficult, because we keep reacting to the possibility that people don't like us. And so guess what? Maybe they don't. And guess what? That reinforces the original set of observations and interpretations. And round you go. A positive cycle can be generated as well. If we notice how people are kind and present, if we interpret people's behavior in a spirit of good faith, if we tend to enjoy that and feel good and have a sense of empathy or understanding when people don't exactly meet our needs, guess what? People like being around us. And it generates a cycle. I've focused on this one example of how we interpret other people's intentions and how we are in relationships, but you could apply it to many, many different things. The idea is that we begin to self-reflect, be self-aware, and have a vision for how we want our lives to be and how we want ourselves to be. And then pause and pay attention at each one of these points and see if we can move ourselves away from habitual patterns that chronically produce the same results and try something else. Try noticing more things. Try considering a variety of interpretations for the events that we do notice. Pause with our feelings and question them and see if they're necessarily accurate. Do they actually fit the situation? Can we refrain from acting on them immediately? Can we notice, can we take the most skillful action we can conceive, and can we pay attention to the results and learn from those results? Perhaps adjust our next encounter of a similar kind and adjust our response to it. In my mind, these are very potent and in some sense simple nodal points in our experience through time, that if we can slow down and be more self-aware and be more intentional, we can make a great big difference. All right, I think I've gotten this said. We'll see if I come back to it from another angle at some point. But as usual, at the end of all of my videos, I like to make a wish for you. If you've hung in with me and listened to this whole thing so far, I think you deserve my good wishes. And so my wish is that you will give yourself the kindness of self-awareness and self-reflection, and realize that reality is maybe not as solid as it seems, and that if you shift your way of being in it in these 5 ways, you can find a lot of power. You can create things and create your own world in a way that gets beyond the gravity and the orbit of chronic habitual patterns. May that happen for you, and good luck with it. Okay, enough for now. Take care. Toodaloo.